On today's show, which of the top 2026 draft prospects is the best fit with the Nets? Who would I select right now at number one? What trades could Brooklyn make to navigate the draft? I'll answer all those fan questions and more on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, it's part two of Fan Take Friday. Got a jam-packed mailbag this week. Part one yesterday with Lucas Kaplan hit on Yegor Dioman, some of the Nets rookies, their overall rebuild plans. And part two today, we got a lot of questions about the 2026 draft, the top prospects, how the Nets will navigate their tank during the second half of the season. So let's get into all that right now. Let's go. All right, back here, we got Lucas Kaplan for part two of this week's Fan Take Friday. Rolled through part one yesterday. A lot of questions about the Nets' current rookies, their rebuild path, some of the guys already on the roster. And now we got a lot of questions about the 2026 draft because we're getting towards the end of the season. The lottery race, the tank race is heating up, and these 2026 draft prospects are showing out. So let's get right into it. First question. If you're the Nets, who is the best fit out of the top four draft prospects? That's from Hollywood Drolls. And I think that this is an interesting question because, you know, we know the top four guys right now. It's Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson. I'd say the first three are the top three in some order. And if you're the Nets, I've thought about this more as of late as I've talked to draft people, gotten to watch some more college basketball. And I think that you can make just a really strong and clear case for any one of them with some of the things that we've heard from the Nets. Like you have Darren Peterson. Who's this guy? If he's right, it'll depend on the medicals. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But if he's right physically, he's this dynamic athlete who can, collapse the defense, has good passing vision, is an elite catch and shoot shooter, can play on or off the ball, good size. That fits. AJ DeBansta, 6'9" wing who, is shooting it well off the dribble right now, can create into the pick and roll, can be versatile defensively, all the things that we heard from Sean Marks about size, defensive versatility, positional versatility, that works. And then Cam Boozer is like the ultimate high feel winning player who can do a lot of the things that the Nets seem to have drafted for in the past drafts. So all of those top three guys I think are really interesting. And I think that say the Nets were to get the number one pick and have their choice of these guys, like the pods that we'll have debating it will be very interesting. But Lucas, what is your opinion on the fit out of these top guys?
The guy that feels the most like the net, like a net, is Cam Boozer. I think you
I knew you were
hinted
say
at
Boozer.
that.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe potentially some athletic limitations that could swing his long-term defensive role, but the feel is pretty unquestionable. The versatility that they always talk about, well, that they really talked about a lot, and when I say they, I mean Sean Marks and Jordi Fernandez, after the draft last season. He feels the most like a net, but man, this team would be blessed to have a top four pick, and it would be, we could debate it all day, but it would be such a talent infusion that I would say Boozer feels the most like a net, and I haven't really done a deep dive yet. He might be my number one right now, but anything would be a blessing in that range for sure.
And that brings us to our next question. If you were the Nets GM, who are you taking with the number one pick in the draft? And that is from Cody Martin. And look, I think Lucas and I have both been obviously watching the Nets a lot more than we've been watching college basketball, but I've gotten to watch some college basketball as of late. And going back to my last answer, I think it's just so easy to make a argument for any one of these top three guys. And I think that you listen to draft people, they're so closely, grouped together. If I had to answer right now, I might say AJ DeBansta just based on the size, some of the things that we're seeing him do as of late. But I'm not like that firm on that answer. For the Nets purposes, and this goes back into what you just said about, Cam seeming like a Nets guy, We spoke on part one of this Fan Take Friday. We got asked, why do the Nets get clowned and people take jabs at them in the media all the time? And we spoke about some of the dysfunction that's followed them. I want to say Darren Peterson is the guy. There's obviously questions there right now that obviously might end up being nothing. But if you're looking for stability, that which the Nets should be desperately looking for, Cam Boozer might be the guy. Not that AJ isn't going to be, but Cam seems like such a steady guy that isn't going to cause any problems and is such a high feel team first guy. I don't know. I gave all three answers. I'll say if Darren Peterson is right physically, I would say Darren Peterson. But Lucas, what is your answer?
Again, not my final answer, but right now I would say Cam. And AJ is awesome. And Caleb's awesome too. I just think that a lot of the critiques I've heard of him are generally not ones I'm comfortable like believing in. The fabled, how will this translate? He's dominating, lesser comp, but this won't translate. It's like the guy is so historically dominant for a freshman, and he's doing it in so many ways. He's not going to be posting up, smaller guys. It's like, he's a great driver off the bounce. He has great feel, passing on drives. He's a good cutter. He's good coming off screens. I trust him the most to figure it out and be a very productive player in the NBA. And then I think the second part of that is oftentimes we unnecessarily separate ceiling and floor. But if Boozer's the guy I'm so sure is going to be a productive NBA player, to me that would also suggest a pretty high ceiling. So right now I'm going Boozer. It's the nerdy take. Obviously one I'm gonna hop on.
It's becoming increasingly less nerdy though. That's becoming more of a consensus. I'm not saying he's the consensus one by any stretch, but you're hearing a lot more people go I might have Cam number one right now. And I think that, some of the things you said about Cam, he doesn't have the flashiest highlight tapes, all that stuff. People kind of, who don't watch him that much might think he's just this bruising back to the basket, below the rim guy who's a post-up guy. It's not the case at all. He is, for his size, so skilled offensively and such, at this point, I think, a high-level processor of defensive coverages. He can just do a lot of stuff. He can shoot. You can play him on or off the ball. He can drive. You can operate with him as a roller. You can operate with him as a ball handler, as a post-up guy. There's just, he can grab and go off of rebounds. I just think that there's so much stuff that he can do. And I think that one of the most important things, you kind of touched on it, you want to draft winners. You want to draft guys who love basketball and who are winners. And he has been a historic winner at every step of the way. You spoke about the impact this season. You look at guys he's the top 5 or 6 guys in terms of box plus minus. He's an 18 this year. And the next highest guy in the whole country is a 13.
I'm looking at it right now. He's 19. He's 18.
He's 19.
Listen, it's you sometimes miss the forest for the trees, right? Hey, look at how he's doing this. He has a 30% usage, shooting 65% from 2 and 41% from 3, and a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio as a big. If he was drafted number 1, unless it's Wemby, he's amazing, and it's not the criticisms that I hear are not nearly as strong as the basic stats that I just mentioned. Not to go not to be too reductive, but I mean the guy is incredible. That being said, so are the other two. Peterson, I actually do have I'm gonna push back a little bit, honestly, and he is incredible, and again, that's would be lucky to have him. But at some point, there's a lot of worrying stuff in his NCAA sample. And I think I agree with you. He's clearly not right physically. That being said, if we, flash forward to June and it's, hey, the medicals are all good. It was just a little blip. It's okay, that's great. But we still have this college season where, he really didn't get to the rim as much. He really low assist to turnover ratio, the defensive playmaking and general explosiveness that we saw before college wasn't there. You have to take somewhat of a leap of faith to just say, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but to say, well, that was all injury. Like if he was healthy, like he would have done all that stuff for sure.
No,
Might
for
be
sure.
true, but that's a lot of.
I agree with
know?
you. Yeah, but I agree with you. But I'd say, and I'm sure you watched it. If you go back to his high school tape at Prolific Prep, it's insane and like otherworldly, and he just looks like one of the best players. And like this is the thing with Darren. You know, we're going to talk about this so many more times before the draft, you know, and before the lottery. But yeah, Darren could be one of those guys who, where if you don't pick him, you could end up being like, you know, the Nets didn't pick Kobe Bryant. I'm not saying he's going to be Kobe Bryant, but just like that kind of thing where everybody looks back on it a decade later and it's like, how could you be so stupid not to pick this guy? Or you could be the Nets team that I just said is craving stability, who picks him. And then there's injury concerns, or there's, you know, concerns about his like want to, or all that. Like, I think some of that stuff's overblown, but either way, I think that he's a guy who it might get a little bit scary, but ultimately, like, that's what scouting's all about. Like, if you watch the scout series last year, you just know anything about the process. It's all about intel and relationships. So all of the information that the Nets are able to get on Darren Peterson will be huge. And look, I don't think it can be discounted. Also, the Nets have, you know, a former head coach in Jacques Vaughn who's on Kansas's staff right now. You know, how did that relationship end with the Nets? Are they sharing information freely? Who knows? They also have two guys in Jalen Wilson and Ochai Agbaji who played for Kansas and obviously won a national title there and have a relationship with Bill Self. So they have some inroads, you know, just on the surface, in addition to all the inroads that they'll have on the back end. So that's what I'd say. But yeah, like Darren, it'll be interesting to see. And then, you know, AJ just looks awesome right now. But outside of those top three and Caleb, next question. If Brooklyn somehow lands outside of the top 4 in the lottery, do you think they'd use some of their assets to move up in the draft? Also, what are the chances in the Nets trying to move up to get a second first-round pick in this upcoming draft? That's from Pino. And I'd say, look, like, I think that they could try to use some of their assets, but I'd also say that we saw this last year in the draft. People try so hard to get a top 4 pick in the draft or a top 3 pick in the draft. It takes so much to get up, especially in this draft where these guys at the top are just so incredible. Look, can we get further down, you know, towards the draft, and maybe there's somebody who loves Caleb Wilson or Kingston Flemings or, you know, whoever else you want to say, and the Nets can move up? Maybe, but I don't see that as a likely scenario just based on how hard it is to get one of those top picks in the first place.
Who's trading with them?
Yeah.
Who? Yeah. That's non-starter in my opinion. Like,
yeah.
Who's trading with them?
I just think that it's really tough. Like, it would have to be something of like what I said, of there's some team that is really high on a guy like Kingston Flemings or, you know, Darius Acuff or Michael Brown or whoever else you want to say, and like they're willing to trade back. But
if anything, the more likely scenario would be trading down to get another second, a second first round pick. Like hypothetically, they end up at 7th. They say, oh, okay, well, we have really scouted this area of the draft, and we know like there's going to be a guy at 12 that we love, so maybe we can get 12 and 25 for 7, giving up 7 to get 12 and 25. Like that, I could see is the way they get a second first round pick. But no, they're not trading into the top 4. That would be no, they're not doing it anyway.
Yeah, I don't see it as likely either. We got some more questions about the draft, about the lottery, about what position the Nets might end up in and how they navigate the second half of this season tank-wise. So we'll get into all that when we close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. Guys, there are nights where your team stresses you out. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Those late-night interviews hit and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built for exactly that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you show up prepared. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. Guys, 5-Hour Energy has a wide variety of flavors, something for everyone. Guys, some of my favorite flavors, Tropical Burst. It has a tasty and fruity flow that gives off island vibes. Sour Apple, crisp, tangy taste with delicious tart. We also got a number of flavors that are sleepers. Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, cotton candy, whatever you like. So find your new favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Guys, there's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. Guys, you'll pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and have tickets locked in within minutes. You'll love seeing the all-in price up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from the seat before buying makes the decision easy. Zone deals will stand out. Choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you have your tickets in minutes. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, part 2 of this Fan Take Friday with Lucas Kaplan. Next question. What is the latest pick you think fans should be satisfied with in this upcoming draft? That's from Mitchell Klee. Lucas, what do you think?
Satisfied? The top 4. Like, I would feel kind of bummed. I would feel bummed if they didn't get a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, that's fair to say.
Hey, listen, they could draft an all-NBA guy at 5, and I could look like an idiot, you know? But in my gut reaction, that's what it'll be.
Yeah, it seems like the top 4 right now. And look, like, I think Nets fans need to brace themselves for the reality that if you're the number 1 lottery spot, you have a coin flip chance of being in the top 4 versus the 5th pick. And, like, that changes, you know, obviously, like, the odds and the floor change wherever you go, but at the best, they're going to have a 52% chance of being in the top 4. So that's kind of what the situation is for me. I'd say the same thing, like top 4. You know, I think that probably like there's some really good players in, 4, 5, 6, 7 range in this draft, which I do think is a little bit of a saving grace for the Nets because I think that this draft is deeper in the lottery than last year's. But yeah, like top 4, that is obviously kind of the marker right now. Next question. Do any of the draft picks from 2025 influence who we select in this draft if we had the top pick? If the answer is no, isn't that an indictment of Sean Marks? That's from Rizzy Wicks. No, I think that none of the draft picks from 2025 influence who we select in this draft, who the Nets select in this draft. And I don't think that that's an indictment of Sean Marks. I think that the Nets didn't have a top pick in this last draft. They had the 8th pick, and they had a lot of late first-rounders. And none of those guys are going to influence who you take with potentially a top 3 or 4 pick in the draft. That's my viewpoint on that.
Okay, number 1, who could you have drafted at 8 that would have, or anywhere from 8 to 19, right, their picks? If you drafted, let's say you loved Colin Murray-Boyles and you're so enthused by his rookie season, would that prevent you from drafting Cam Boozer if you think he's the best player? No, I don't think so. I mean, what if they won the lottery last year and they had Cooper Flagg and they also thought Cam Boozer was the best player? Would you not draft him because of fit? Like, I don't think so. So, no to both. No to both. You always draft who you think the best player is, especially today's day and age. Like, you could play Wemby and Chet together. It'd be awesome.
It's a very position list, obviously a big premium on versatility. So agreed on both points. Next question. What part of the season do the Nets ditch or shut down their vets altogether to let their 2-ways and first-round picks get most of the run? And if we're going based off of what they did last year, like the last couple weeks of the season, the last week of the season, that seems like the most likely scenario. I mean, MPJ and Yegor, as we're recording this, are tonight they're going to play in their second straight back-to-back, which is kind of funny. I mean, look, they're going to lose. Like, their last back-to-back was against the Thunder, and this one's against the Celtics. But it's just funny that like they didn't play in any back-to-backs in the first half of the season, and now it's getting to like nut crunch time tanking-wise, and they're like playing all these back-to-backs. And look, they've lost 6 straight games. Like they're playing against the Celtics team. I think that's why these guys are playing. But yeah, like I think that I said it on my pod last night. I think they should go all out to try to get that number 1 spot. I'm skeptical of whether they're going to, even though they've lost 6 straight, they're really bad, whether they're going to do some of the same things that some of these other tanking teams are going to do just because they haven't done it yet, even though they are a really bad team.
Yeah, I think the time, you'll see, like, yesterday, Nets PR posted a stat that said Yegor is the first Nets rookie to go at least 9 assists and 1 or fewer turnovers since Reese Beekman last year on April 10th or April 9th. I went, oh my God, I don't remember that game. That April 9th, that last 10 days, that last 2 weeks, when the clock hits April, you'll see like, Nolan, Grant Nelson, Saraf lineups, stuff like that. I think until then, they haven't really shown a need to shut down these veterans. And like Erik said, now they're playing guys back-to-backs, which I think is a good sign about Yegor's plantar fascia injury that he was dealing with early in the year. But that I think is when you'll really see it, because so far there hasn't been a need for it. One thing I'd like them to do against worse teams is rest one of Day'Ron and Nick. Like that Bulls game, right? The Bulls, their only center was Nick Richards, who's 6'9", who played really well in his minutes, but like that's really the tank weapon. Oh, he's a forward.
He was the starting center. Yeah, no, bro, I agree with you.
That's the thing. That's the one thing.
Yeah, and you said that they haven't had to rest these veterans, but that's just because their schedule has gotten really tough. Like they were lucky to come away with that loss against the Pacers. They beat the Bulls. They beat the Wizards. Like they didn't rest veterans in those games, and they could have lost. I mean, they could have lost instead of won, or in that Pacers game, they could have won instead of lost. So, look, like I think they're in fine position right now. But like, yeah, the reason they haven't had to as of late is because the schedule is really difficult. And you look at the upcoming schedule, they've got Boston, Cleveland, Miami, Detroit, Memphis, Detroit. So they have a really difficult upcoming schedule. But then at some point, it is going to get easier. And you look at the easiest portion of their schedule, it's the last, 8 or 9 games of the season, March 29th on. They have Sacramento, Charlotte, Atlanta, Washington, Milwaukee, Indiana, Milwaukee, Toronto. So that's right about when April comes along. That's the point where I think you're going to see like, okay, we can't mess around right now because this is just, we're playing against a lot of bad teams. So
Cam Thomas, I need one last thing from you, brother.
Cam Thomas, the savior.
I need one last thing. One last 40 ball.
They have 2 games against the Bucks in the last 4 of the season. Cam Thomas legacy, or does Cam Thomas have the foresight to just come out and stink it up against the Nets to try to totally screw them?
I will never forgive him.
Playing 3D chess in that case.
I will never forgive him if he does that.
All right, last question. Who should represent the Nets on the day of the lottery drawing? Jordy, Mr. Whammy, Vince Carter, or my favorite, if he's willing to do it, Dr. J? We need some good luck to break the curse. That's from Stephen K. Look, I'd say Whammy, but I mean, they didn't do Whammy last year. But hey, maybe they learned from some of their mistakes. I mean, I think like Vince could be a candidate. Dr. J, I don't see him doing that. But yeah, maybe it's Joe Tsai. Like, who knows? But I think that I would vote Whammy just for some good karma.
I would vote Yegor. You can't burn Dr. J on the lottery. He's the fact that when he came back for Vince Carter's jersey retirement last year was the first time in a long time. I might be forgetting one instance, but that's a big deal. Break in case of emergency. Whammy. If Whammy wants to do it, he should have first dibs. But Yegor is just such a happy-go-lucky, cherubic young fella. I feel like only something good could happen in his presence. I feel like he'll give a great quote afterwards, no matter what happens. Yeah, Yegor. He would make me feel the best seeing him up there. I would get less nervous, honestly.
All right, I like that. I like that response, but that's all the questions that we got on this Fan Take Friday. Lucas, appreciate you taking the time as always. The Nets have the Celtics on Friday. They got the who do they have? The Cavs on Sunday, I think. And then is it the Cavs on Sunday? The Cavs on Sunday. So we'll have plenty of more coverage of that next week. But Lucas, appreciate taking the time as always. That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed the mailbag episode with Lucas. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now. Smash that like button. Leave a comment. Leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. And that's got the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday. So I'm going to have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.